Look, who doesn't want to be a wizard? Show me one person who thinks calling forth spells from the ethereal plane is silly, and I'll show you a liar. From Morgan Le Fay and Merlin to Harry Dresden and Dr. Stephen Strange, these masters of the magical arts do cool stuff we can only dream of, like shoot lightning from fingertips, or, in the case of Gandalf the Grey, disappear whenever it's narratively convenient. Wizards are commonplace in games, and it's high time that we got to play one in virtual reality. The Wizards Enhanced Edition, enhanced from its earlier PC version, uses the PSVR headset and move wands to turn you into a living, breathing Sorcerer Supreme in no time. The Wizards is a really neat idea that makes novel use of the PSVR hardware, but it's hamstrung by unreliable controls and an overall sense of hamminess mostly exhibited by second-rate funhouses.
These ruins are quite famous, but astonishingly little is known about them. There is a rift in one of the remaining towers, and my favorite theory about the history of this place is that it was a wizard king's palace that was abandoned after the rift opened.
I want to get right to the coolest thing about the Wizards, the gesture-based magic spells. The land of Meliora is dangerous and full of monsters and imposing boss creatures that can only be brought down by the gesticulating hands of goodly wizards. As a fan of the Doctor Strange Marvel film, this mechanic really set well with me. The game starts you off with 3 meager but useful abilities: a fireball, a shield to deflect projectiles, and an ice-based bow and arrow that lets you attack targets across great distances. Summoning these abilities involves holding down the move triggers while moving your hands in specific swiping patterns. Throwing fireballs and deflecting projectiles with a magical energy shield is cool, but I really love the complexity of late-game spellcasting. Pulling my fists back and then forward to unleash a torrent of lightning bolts like Emperor Palpatine, and turning my hands in a clockwise counterclockwise fashion to fire off arcane missiles never gets old. All spells can be upgraded with passive bonuses by spending gemstones earned after reaching predetermined score thresholds in each level, thereby increasing your shield's durability, create chain lightning that attacks nearby enemies, set monsters on fire, and even leave behind an area effect. The practice of using the move wands to create and throw spells functions well enough. That is, when it works. As I battled my way across 3 levels and the stages contained within, it seemed to me that the technology works perfectly fine because most of the encounters are limited to a few manageable monsters separated by generous downtime. Later stages barely give you a moment to breathe during fairly intense arena battles that require crowd control that maybe the technology wasn't equipped to handle. It was during the latter 2/3 of the game that I experienced on-tracking behaviors, the most prevalent being range attacks flying off in wild, unintended directions. For every offensive spell, an animated gyroscope pops up and acts more or less like a targeting reticule that moves as you move your head around, showing you the general direction the attack will hit. I say general because more than half the time I'd watch the fireball land several feet to the right, left, top, or even bottom of where I was trying to aim. There'd also be instances where the attack will veer completely off target, shooting almost immediately to the right as soon as it left my hand. This is a real significant problem in the late game as you must battle goblins, orcs, and sandworms coming at you from all directions. On top of that, creepy demons float menacingly towards you and can only be destroyed with magical javelins that can only be acquired by interacting with magical columns peppered throughout the battleground. But please, don't get me started on those. The Javelin spell encapsulated all of my frustration with the controls because they constantly failed to launch from my hands despite making these seemingly correct gestures. This allowed the demons to come up and make contact and get a free unfair hit. Oh, it just makes me annoyed and angry just thinking about it. Ugh! As an up-and-coming wizard, your adventures and experiences in Meliora are done in service towards helping Aurelius, a master wizard who accidentally trapped himself in a different dimension. Together, you'll track down and subdue an evil warlock, halting plans to take over the world. The stages are diverse, taking you to a ruined castle, an abandoned mine, and a hidden sanctuary in the desert, where those creepy demons dwell. Ugh. Locations make pretty good first impressions. The castle and the desert temple are certainly evocative, but the more I explored, I found them to be lacking. The stages themselves are relatively lifeless and empty. Beyond hunting down crystals to boost health, there's no real incentive to explore levels because there's just nothing to see. Many of the combat encounters play out the same way as you enter arenas, fight a steady stream of the same orcs, goblins, and trolls until they stop respawning, then move deeper into the level and pretty much do it again. Some levels introduce obstacles to these battles, like fireball spewing statues and fire traps, which does break up the monotony well enough. I would have liked more of those, to be honest. The boss fights are probably the best moments in the game because they're more involved and make better use of their environments than any level before it. And it's a lot more fun to use spells against giant monsters.
Not be stopped.
Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
The Wizards Enhanced Edition offers an adventure set against a barely there story and empowers the player with a cool gameplay mechanic that can be more trouble than it's worth sometimes. Depending on the difficulty setting, it could easily take a day or two to finish the game, with systems built in to encourage replay, like unlockable cards that affect certain game behaviors, such as making enemies stronger and faster, and an online arena to duel friends. Given how frequently my spells would miss their mark, and just the general control issues I had, I didn't feel confident enough to engage other players. Neither of these options really made me feel like I had to go back and play through the game again. The Wizards sounds awesome on paper, and it's a great idea, but the unpredictable controls were more distracting and frustrating than I'd like. DarkStation gives the Wizards Enhanced Edition for PlayStation VR a 3 out of 5.